going on, Reset Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Operation Self Reset. I am Jacob Naraki. Like always, thank you very much for listening to this episode in particular. If you may recall, last week I was coming to you live from Children's Hospital here in Wisconsin. Just an update, everything is going good. We're back home, everything is stable, and I appreciate all the support and all the emails. And like I said, our child had a complication, but of course there are always children that have worse complications and worse issues. And if you are a parent or you know of somebody that has a child that has gone through some terrible issues, my heart goes out to you because it's not a fun experience. And I wish you and or your loved ones nothing but the best and support. And my love goes out towards you. But with that being said, today we have on Samir, and he is going to be talking to us about jiu-jitsu and karate. I can't exactly remember what his specialty is, but he's kind of bringing that to your personal life. As you know, this is called Operation Self Reset, and he has a lot of great tips in helping you reset your own personal life. So it's going to be an awesome little interview. I'm sorry that I don't have a joke for you today, just because, of course, like anything, when it rains, it pours. My main computer has a snafu with the electronics, and the audio is out, so I don't know what's going on there, but hopefully we'll have that back up and running. So I'm just kind of doing this on the spot the day before in my kitchen. Just trying to knock it out here for you guys so you guys can be fulfilled on your Wednesday morning commute or Wednesday morning ventures. With that being said, before we dive into the interview, if you would take a look at goalie.com. I'm one of the coaches on this great platform. Head on over to goalie.com. There's around 20 to 30 coaches on there currently, and it's getting updated every single day. It's a great way for you to find the resources and ideas needed to help your life get in the direction that you want. It's all free. These coaches they are from around the world. Great insight, great backgrounds, and they will truly blow off your socks. Yeah, your socks will be blown off your feet once you get onto goalie.com and check it out. And if you enjoy listening to podcasts and you enjoy this one and many others, but you're looking for more content, head on over to audibletrial.com/OSR. audibletrial.com/OSR, and you can get yourself a free Audible book. There are over 1 million books on that platform. They have a huge category in the personal development space. So if you're looking to grow yourself on the way to work or on the way to a family vacation or whatever, I'd highly suggest heading over to audibletrial.com/OSR. I apologize for sounding muted and not excited. I am in the kitchen of my house here, and the children are in bed, so I don't want to wake them up too bad. But regardless, thanks again for all your support, all your love, and now here's the interview.
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're talking about the mind and the body connection. With us today we have Samir. He's going to enlighten us with the things he has learned, the things that have helped him and have helped numerous other people around himself. Samir, my man, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Jacob. Happy to be here.
Yeah, to be honest, you and I never connected. We never met in person. We're not friends, but I'm pretty sure at the end of this conversation we will be. Give us a background of who you are, how did you get into this space, and what inspired you to start this project?
Sure. I am 41 years old, recently married. I live in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. My background basically is I was in the corporate world for many years as a consultant, doing management consulting. Got my MBA in finance and real estate and decided to get into real estate investing, which is something I still do. So kind of had to reinvent myself many times, but was sort of, trying to figure out how I really fit in, what was my niche, and really trying to discover who I was. And the one common denominator amongst all these various career choices I had throughout my life was that I'm also a martial artist. And I had been studying martial arts for almost 20 years now. And regardless of what I did for a living in terms of my job or where I lived or anything like that, the one thing that was constant in my life was my training. And I think it was through my training that I really discovered who I was. And it really informed me in terms of where I wanted to go in my life and really where I ended up today. And whenever I got stuck, whenever I was looking for answers, trying to improve myself, trying to get over an obstacle. It wasn't the Tony Robbins book or the 7 Secrets of this or the 5 Habits of that. It was my training. It's really, I came back to, okay, if I was on the mat and this obstacle that's facing me was an opponent, how would I handle it? And I realized that the principles that I studied in my training of martial arts were really universal principles. They were applicable to everything. It wasn't unique to physical technique, locking joints, punching, kicking. Those are very superficial aspects of the arts. When you really get beyond technique and the physicality of it, you realize that they are transformative arts. And that's really was, for me, what did it and what helped me to get on this path of coaching and help me discover who I was and what I really wanted to do.
Sure. Give us what inspired you for the martial arts. Was it Chuck Norris, in Delta, that really got you inspired? what was it? Was it, give us a background on your culture. What is your background? What is your heritage?
I'm originally from India. I am Indian. My family is from New Delhi. And as far as the martial arts goes, I guess like most young boys, I was, watching the kung fu flicks on Saturday afternoons. So
sure,
that was my initial sort of exposure to it. And I'd always been fascinated by it. But it wasn't until I had just gotten out of college and I was actually working on a out-of-state project for a company I was working with. My roommate and I, we were just looking for a place to get some dinner. And we pulled up into this strip mall and there was a martial arts class going on. I knew nothing about it, but I was just mesmerized. And I said, you know what? I'll be back in about 10 minutes. And I guess that turned into almost an hour.
Sure.
Because he came and found me. And at the end of the class, I went up to the teacher and I said, where do I start?
Cool.
And that happened to be Aikido. That was the first art that I studied, which I still study.
Okay.
So sometimes I feel like the thing you're meant to do finds you in some ways. It's not like you have to go and seek it out, but it's somehow when you're ready, it finds you, and that just happens.
Wow, that's powerful. What's that famous line? When the student is ready, the mentor will appear, or something like that. And it's so true. Thinking about that, reflecting on that, because it's easy to connect the dots in some way, but also too, I was into online marketing stuff. And then that led me into podcasting. And then, I had some, personal issues happen. And I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to inspire people that are down in the dumps. And so that's how I started this project. And it's a great, just by you saying that, obviously wasn't prolific or, crazy, new terms you threw in there. It's those little things that I think sometimes we don't look at as a big deal, but kind of taking a second and reflecting on it, it's kind of, describes of who we are. And it's kind of cool in a way too, that you never grew up with this. It's not like your parents were like, no, you're going to be, going to karate or, jujitsu when you're 5 years old and you're going to keep going until you're 18. And then when you're 18, you can decide if you want to carry on. It's something that you personally decided at a older age. And you knew that what you're getting into, you knew the background, you knew the culture and everything like that. So it was really interesting. I guess before we dive into the questions of kind of helping the audience, what did you find out about yourself? Did you become a little more relaxed? What was your mindset a little bit? Give us that background. What was that transformation from when you started the martial arts to kind of now getting into where we're at?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess the biggest thing I realized was I was completely at peace when I stepped on the mat. Even if I didn't have perfect skill or technique, or I was struggling with a move of some kind, I never questioned where my place was in the world.
Sure.
Whereas before, whether I was at work or doing a corporate job or anything outside of that, I always questioned, well, am I good enough to do this? Is this right for me? Am I in the right place? Those questions were always haunting me. But the minute I put my gi on and stepped on the mat, I said, this is where I'm supposed to be. And so I think it gave me a sense of belonging, and it gave me a sense of peace of, part of what my larger purpose was.
Sure. What is it? Do they teach you that as soon before you even get on the mat? Is it something that they bring you into? Is it calming techniques? Is it what do you do? I guess to get there. Was it meditation? Was it something? I guess I'm looking for like that secret sauce. What is that thing that they putting on the gi, right? The gi.
Yeah.
Was it laced with some type of narcotic that you were kind of all in this translucent state or whatever? Give us a little more insight.
I Unfortunately, there was no magic bullet. I wish there
Sure.
was. I could
Of course.
send it out to all of you. Here it is.
No, you better hold on to it, and then you could charge us for it, and then you make
Right.
Google bucks, right?
For me, I think it was just I was ready.
Cool.
It just came at a point in my life where I was very unsatisfied with where I was, and I just felt like a fish out of water. And then the day I stepped on the mat on my first day of training, I felt like I just belonged there, and all those doubts and nagging questions kind of disappeared.
Sure.
And so I think it was just a settling of my own energy that allowed me to see some clarity and find more centeredness.
So, how old were you when you first stepped on the mat?
I was maybe in my early 20s.
Okay, and so now you're 40, you're 41. I guess what is that middle stage? What have you noticed? Did you start enjoying your career more? Did you have better relationships?
Yeah, really what it was is as I progressed in my training, I realized that my training informed my life. And I started to see parallels between how I moved on the mat, how I reacted to stress under pressure, and how I did the same things outside of the training. Whether it was working with an angry client, whether it was dealing with, friends and family in difficult situations, I started to see patterns. And then I realized, okay, I can change these patterns. And I did that through the training. And that's what really the real value in the training is, not being able to throw somebody twice your size. Honestly, that gets pretty boring after all. You're like, okay, what else?
Sure.
And so for me, it was, oh, okay, I see. When I can be relaxed under pressure, when I can take a force and neutralize it and hold my own structure, I can take that same principle and that same lesson and apply it to anything else that I face in my life. And for me, that's what kept me training. It wasn't the physical skill. It was the transformational process that the physical skills gave you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's now move into, why did you get inspired to share this knowledge? Obviously, martial arts has been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Why you? Why do you feel that you have the mindset, the ability to connect with people, to give them insight into what you have learned?
Well, I think it's because I was sort of doing this unconsciously throughout my life. And it wasn't until I reached a point where I made it conscious and brought it apparent to myself and said, you know what? I've been doing this already. It's just a question of making it formal at this point. And whenever I faced challenges, it was my training and my own practice that got me through. And so when my friends would come to me, and this I noticed was very common, is whenever my friends were having trouble, they would come to me for advice. And sometimes it was even my boss or my supervisor coaching them. I thought that was kind of strange, but okay. And I realized what I was telling them was the very thing I was working on that I learned through my practice.
Interesting.
And I said, I'm already doing this. I'm already embodying this very thing. And it just seems to come naturally. So why not just, make it formal?
Right.
Yeah.
So you learned the training, you implemented it into your life.
Mm-hmm.
People saw the increase of your aura, your energy, your personal success, and then not talking about money, but they noticed that. Mm-hmm. People started coming to you, and then that's when you had the aha of, I want to start teaching this stuff to people, because obviously you already are, and the only way to become a master student or a great student is to become a teacher of the things that you have learned. So now, I guess, what are the principles that you love sharing with clients or individuals or somebody that's in that in-between stage, that kind of, I'm happy with life, but not really, I'm comfortable, but I kind of want to do something different, blah, blah, blah.
Sure. So once I finally decided that, I want to do this as a career and I want to really devote myself to this, I started to sort of had to reverse engineer what I already knew. And I said, okay, what are those principles that I use that my training has taught me? And from that, I developed this methodology I call self-mastery, because I realized that it wasn't about doing something to somebody or manipulating something outside of yourself. It was really about controlling yourself and staying centered. And from that, everything emanates from there. And so the whole methodology is based around you. Self-mastery, obviously the name implies you. It's not mastering others, but what I realized is you master yourself and you're able to master your environment. And so the principles that I share with people and the four sort of governing principles of this methodology are: number one, awareness, both of yourself and of your environment. Number two, centeredness. Number three, non-resistance. And number four, alignment. And if you look at it, you can get more details on my website, but if you look at it in terms of a Venn diagram, you have these four circles or these four principles. Where they overlap in the center, there's a little space. That's where self-mastery happens, is when these four principles are operating simultaneously in any given situation. And that's what I use to coach with my clients.
Sure. Looking at those four things: awareness. What's the second one? So sorry, I was trying to write this down. Curiosity.
Yeah, awareness, centeredness.
Oh, centeredness. Jeez, my handwriting is so poor. Resistance, and then alignment.
Mm-hmm.
I think the two that I want to focus on: resistance and alignment. Mm-hmm. Resistance. So let's, I guess, peel back that layer a little bit. Obviously, we're kind of, I think all humans, kind of have this shield around us. We don't smile as much as we should, because we think everybody's there to go in our pockets and to, scam us on something. We don't want to open up too bad in our relationships because we know we're going to get hurt. So it's like a resistance kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess let's just talk about that first. If you could enlighten, I guess, the people that don't really understand the resistance layer, and if you could throw in there maybe a couple of things to help somebody bring down that resistance.
Sure. So the principle of non-resistance, basically if to put it in the most simplest terms, is resist nothing. Whatever you resist, you make stronger, and you make yourself weaker in the process. And this is very apparent in physical exercise, or especially in martial arts, where if somebody grabs me or strikes, if I literally resist their attack, if I brace and hunker down, I actually make them stronger and I become weaker. And it's very easy for them to take my balance or throw me. But the minute I simply allow them to do whatever they want to do and accept that energy, I'm in a position of control.
Nice.
Yeah. You cannot change what you resist. You can only change and control what you accept. And so one of the greatest principles in my study of the arts that I study is this principle of non-resistance. My Tai Chi teacher says, how can you borrow somebody's energy if you're resisting them? And the only way you can do that is to accept. And it's not an easy thing to learn, because we're hardwired to resist something we don't like, whether it's a person, an idea, a situation. We want to push it away. Whereas the exact opposite response is what's needed to really change that situation.
That is awesome. That example is so cool. Now, a lot of people, the audience, sometimes I really get into it because I'm very connected with oneself and whatever. I'm not a master by no means, but I kind of understand it. So if you could, though, either think of an example or how you related that, using somebody's energy into life, into their jobs, instead of boss, somebody's, giving you a new opportunity for a business and you're resisting it because it's going to be change. Can you give us an example how it would relate a little better, on normal terms, I guess?
Sure. So before I started doing the coaching and everything, one of the other businesses that I still have is real estate investing. And I remember when I was in the process of flipping my first house, it was literally like getting my PhD in real estate. It was such an incredible experience. I realized that despite my education and everything, there was no training for this. You got to just roll your sleeves up and get into it and get dirty. And one of the mistakes I made was I miscalculated my budget, and I was way over budget on a project. And I was like, oh crap, now what? Now I could have just fought it and said, all right, I'm just going to throw in the towel. But with every obstacle, there's an inherent solution, and it has an energy about it that if you can harness it, the solution becomes self-evident. So I said, all right, let me just accept the fact that I'm over budget, and that, my contractor is tardy. He doesn't show up on time, all those variables that can affect the outcome. And I took that and completely accepted where I was and the mistakes I made. And from that, I was able to course correct. And I actually turned out making a very handsome profit on the deal, despite the fact that I was over budget, because I was able to compensate by accepting those things and then being able to change other things to balance the equation out.
Sure. And I think that holds true with a lot of people's lives, especially when it comes to money. I think that's, everybody can relate to it. So it's almost like going with the flow, identifying the problem and feeling okay with it, not stressing about it, not freaking out, just going with it and keep on moving forward.
Yeah, I would say that's a good way to put it. The danger, however, I think sometimes people will misinterpret going with the flow with just getting pushed over or being a doormat.
Right.
Let me go with the flow and everything will be hunky-dory. Yes, but that doesn't mean you give up your own center and allow the situation to bulldoze you.
Sure.
So the acceptance, once you do accept the situation, then you're able to meet it from a place of power. And that's where choice comes in.
Sure. Let's use that example, actually. I'm thinking of a lot of people have disagreements with their boss, a superior, or somebody, either in the military, career, whatever it is.
Yeah.
When those people hunker down on us, we screwed up on a project, we messed up, and everybody listening has messed up something in their life, and somebody has come down on them. I guess using that terminology and examples and everything like that, and you saying, don't be a doormat. So how do we get over that? Do we let them vent? And then we attack them. I'm not saying attack, but give me a little more baseline on that.
So I remember when I was a management consultant, we were working for a very large publicly traded company, and my client, the lady I was reporting to, was a very belligerent person, very difficult to work with. You just never knew who was going to show up on a given day, whether it was the happy one or the crazy one. So you just had to be on your toes. And I remember we had our usual weekly meetings, and she lost it. She went crazy, and she started yelling. And I just sat there, and I said, "Okay, I see that you are upset. Where in this situation, what is it you would like me to fix? What can I do to change this?" I basically put it back upon her to tell me what she wanted versus trying to, number one, contest her anger, and number two, trying to predict what would be the outcome. Let their own aggression show you the solution.
Sure. And I think the value point that you shared in there too was asking them a question, being calm, like really show me, hold my hand. And I think even myself, being yelled at, I think we shut down. We're thinking, I just want to get out of here. This is not feeling good. I feel insecure. And you just want to walk out. And as soon as you walk out, because you're so focused on those fears, you walk out and you go, I don't even know what the heck I need to do next time. So then when they give you the same project or the same thing, you feel like, oh my God, I'm going to get fired now, or I'm going to really get it, or whatever. So I think there is value in that, of taking that second and having clear thoughts, absorbing their energy, and looking past the anger and the hate and the tears or whatever they're showing, and figure out, how can I improve? And I think anybody that sees that somebody wants to be better, everybody will reach out and help them the best they can, or maybe that boss will be a little less than severe. But no, really good example, and I really love that, using somebody else's energy. I think that's that's really cool. That was a really good example. You should use that in your stuff. All right.
Okay, I appreciate it. I'll share just a little technique with you and your audience.
Sure.
One thing that really helps me in those situations is to connect with my breath.
Oh, okay.
So part of the coaching I do is somatic, in terms of I help you get out of your head and into the body and see how the body reflects what the mind is thinking. And so in those situations when I am dealing with a difficult person, when I realize that this is escalating into a conflict, I immediately do my best to connect with my own body in terms of my breathing and see, what is my breathing telling me? If my breathing is shallow, if it's in my chest, I know that my energy is getting elevated and I'm basically not staying centered. Whereas if I can connect and really breathe into my stomach, in my, what I'll call, your third chakra, for those of you who practice yoga, it's just a few inches below the navel. That is where your physical seat of power is. And if you can, even if you're in a meeting, just put your hand there and see if you can breathe into that space. All of a sudden, you'll feel your energy get calm.
Where's that space? Describe it for me.
Yeah, it's called in Chinese arts. It's called the dantian. In Japanese, it's called your hara. It's your basically your center of gravity. It's just a few inches below the navel.
Huh. Okay. Interesting. So
Yeah.
what? We just put a finger on it?
You can just place your palm on it and see as you inhale if you can push the belly out into the palm. You can even try that now if you're
Yeah.
all of a sudden you'll feel that energy settle. And in a situation like that where you're dealing with a difficult person, just by doing that and changing that posture and just putting your mind there,
Hmm.
the situation starts to lose its charge. I can't explain it, but I know that it works.
Sure. Sure. Awesome. Good little tip. That's an insider secret right there,
There
people.
you go. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Alignment. Let's
Mhm.
talk about that. Obviously, being in line with our body, our mind, nature, culture, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Why is that so important?
Well, I think alignment is really important because many times our thoughts and actions are not in quote alignment with what our real intentions and our desires are. And then we wonder when we go through life, well, I'm doing all this, but I'm not getting the result I want. Or I thought that if I did this, this was supposed to make me happy or successful. And really, it was this principle that helped me realize that I wasn't doing what I felt I was meant to be doing. Because all this time I was doing these various careers and taking these jobs and getting these educations that I thought, okay, this is the blueprint for success. But I reached a point where I said, you know what? This is not working. Something is misaligned. Even though my actions seemed correct on the surface, my intentions were true, it didn't connect with I don't want to get too esoteric, but it didn't connect with sort of whatever my higher purpose was. And so there was definitely a misalignment there for me. And I said one day, I said, you know what? I just want to get paid to be who I am. I don't want to put on the suit and tie and fit the square peg in the round hole because it hasn't worked.
Sure.
And for me, that's really what alignment is what you say and what you do and what you intend in alignment with who you truly are.
Yeah. And I think it's, especially in our society, even people around the world, it affects everybody. You sometimes disconnect yourself. You get in these routines and habits and things, and then you get a second, or you see a movie, you see a commercial that hits you right in the gut, and it kind of questions you. Like, are you really living your purpose? And you're like, oh man, I don't know. And I guess actually, let's roll into that. What do you say when somebody approaches you like, hey, I want to find my purpose? Like, I mean, you obviously got the mind body connection, intuition, all that stuff. You got everything gelling. But like, what is it? Like, they just feel like they don't know. Like, do you have anything you can tell them?
In terms of finding their purpose?
Yeah. I know it's a loaded question. Purpose is so hard.
Actually, somebody did ask me this not too long ago. And I said, just be okay with the question.
Huh.
A lot of times we get into the fix-it mode saying, okay, let me find my purpose. Let me take these steps. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But be okay with if that sort of quantitative approach doesn't work. And I think a lot of it is just being in a place in your life when you're ready to really accept what that purpose was. I think for me, it was a part of me didn't want to accept it, where I felt like, okay, once I realized this is who I am. I'm a martial artist. I have this mind-body connection. I have to embrace this. Right. And if I don't, then I'll continue to try to fit the square peg in the round hole. Yeah. And I think part of finding purpose is being okay with, number one, not knowing what it is at that given moment, and just allowing that question to simmer a bit, and just being ready for allowing it to show up. I think the other thing is, don't have an idea of what that should look like. I mean, if you asked me 10 years ago, this is what I would be doing and where I was, I'd say you're crazy. Yeah. I certainly couldn't tell you. I couldn't see it coming. But now looking back, I said, oh, okay, I see how all the dots now connect.
No, for sure. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. Having this connection, mind body, what do you do to fuel yourself? Fuel, not feel. I don't know if that came out wrong. Fuel yourself to be in this state. Obviously having this background, and you're probably very natural and stuff like that. Is there anything that really gels well with yourself that people are maybe they are or not doing?
In terms of a practice, you mean?
Yeah, practice or food, because obviously you're probably putting great things into your body that is allowing you to have this great clarity, state of mind, focus,
Right.
in touch with yourself. What is your philosophy on that?
Well, for me personally, being a martial artist, I practice every single day. I would say if you can find some way to get out of the head, and it doesn't have to be a formal meditation practice. You don't have to sit in the lotus position and chant a mantra or anything like that. Because I know it's very hard to do, especially in our modern society, in our Twitters and social media accounts that are always bombarding us.
Right.
But if you can find time to consciously unplug, go take a walk, go to the park, put the cell phone down, find time to just be with yourself. To me, the value of that is immense. Even if it means you take your lunch break, go out, sit in the park bench, and just be. Don't check email. Don't tweet anything. Just sit.
And there's a lot of power in that too. I mean, just even letting your mind kind of relax and kind of gel out, and listening to things that you push out, the tweeting the birds, the ruffle of the leaves, the wind, whatever.
Yeah.
And you don't have to get deep and then, start, growing out your armpit hair and, living a life of the tree forest. But, just being really in touch and grounded. And I was actually listening to a podcast, and a gentleman was saying that there's so many negative ions from electronics or something that the only way to get rid of them is to ground ourselves, taking off your shoes and like walking on the surface of the earth. Yeah. To kind of create a balance of negative and positive ions in our body, so we're more energized to work. Have you ever heard that?
I believe I have, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It definitely works.
Yeah, sure. Random fact, just threw it in there. Let's get into a couple of questions left.
Yeah.
What did people think when you said, "Hey, I'm going to quit everything. I'm going to push everything aside, and I'm going to be 100% dedicated to self-mastery, and I'm going to coach people on this," and all the stuff that you do now? Was your family like, "Oh, that's awesome, good for you"? Were your friends like, "You're crazy, you lost it"? Give us that.
Yeah. Well, I'll say the first obstacle was myself. I was like, am I crazy to even think about it?
Yeah, true.
There's the doubting voice. But once I kind of got over that and I started to present the idea, people actually were very positive about it. I mean, my family were concerned being
right.
Family. They're like, well, how are you going to make a living? How does that work? How do you pay the bills? They had very practical concerns.
Right.
But my friends who had known me for a long time and, even colleagues of mine, they were like, that makes total sense. Like they could totally see it.
Cool.
It was almost like, duh,
Right.
But, so it's a scary thing, but once I put it out there and I got that positive reinforcement, it just helped me reassure myself that I was on the right track.
Yeah. No, and I think, and also too, you probably surrounded yourself with good, genuine people, and also too, you're living what you were learning. So it wasn't like, you're a big alcoholic and then one day you're like, I'm just going to dive into, karate and live a life of, the samurai, and they're like, whoa, what the heck happened to you? So you started implementing those things, you believed in it, you started sharing. And I think, that was the easier transition as opposed to somebody in that previous example, like I said. Samir, my man, honestly, you're really good. I love your examples, the way you incorporate your personal stories, the dedication towards the martial arts, and obviously what you believe in. Before we ask you the final question, is there any tangible things that really inspired you, that really gave you insight into a deeper meaning of your life that you could share? Was it a book? Was it a meditation practice? Was it somebody you heard online or just walking on the street or a newspaper article that inspired you to look deeper into this craft?
Yeah, well, I've always been sort of, I guess you'd call a self-development junkie for many years. I've got a massive library. I'd say one of the books that I keep coming back to, actually, I'll give you two books.
Sure.
The first is the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. It is a classic piece of Chinese Taoist philosophy. And You've probably heard different offshoots of it, like the Tao of Pooh, the Tao of this. The word tends to get thrown around a lot, but go back to the source and read this book and really just let it sort of,
Marinate.
Exactly. Let it marinate. Don't try to take it all in one bite, because I think I've read it at least 100 times over the years, and I always get something new out of it. The other book I would say is the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius.
Okay. And he just goes into a deeper sense of meditation, how to connect, breathing, all that stuff.
Well, the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius was actually his personal diary. For those of you who aren't familiar with him, he was a famous Roman emperor. He's one of the great Roman emperors, Marcus Aurelius. And this book called The Meditations was really his personal diary of his thoughts. It was actually never meant to be published. It was kind of his own private thoughts. But it is, I would say, the original self-help book, because in it he talks about how to be in the world, how to be a good person, how do you govern, how do you rule, how do you interact with people.
Wow.
To me, those two books were sort of the foundations that really started to put me on this path of self-mastery and really explore them on a much deeper level.
Oh, for sure. I'll for sure put them in the show notes. The great thing is those were not the traditional 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and the classic, and nothing wrong with that. The classics are truly classics because they're great. They have great information, but it's a different perspective and a different way to look at different things. So I appreciate you sharing that. So let's wrap this up with the last question. What does a self-reset mean to you?
Ooh, okay. To me, the self-reset was a subtractive process. And by that, I mean it was a getting rid of what no longer served me. I think to take that term self-reset, when you reset something, and in this case yourself, if you're looking at it again, you have to ask yourself, what is it that is no longer serving me? And part of it, at least this process of self-mastery for me, was what am I holding on to that just is no good anymore? So it was kind of like chipping away at what is inessential to really reveal what is true. And self-reset, I think, for me is get rid of what's no longer who you are. Stop holding on to stuff that's holding you back, and open your palm to let something else come in.
Awesome. Well said, my man. Are you a speaker? Do you speak too on this stuff?
I'm not a professional speaker.
Okay. No. Cool. Well, that was very well said. How can people get in touch with you, check you out, find more information?
Sure. Well, the best way is probably just through my website. That's www.samirsharma.com. And through that, I have a contact page. You can reach me there. And that's probably the best way to start a dialogue.
Cool. And I'll put all that in the show notes, because that does not sound like traditional spelling to some people out there. So it was, how do you say your last name? Samir?
So Sharma is my last name. Let me just spell it for you. It's SAMEERSHARMA.com.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Because last kind of just general topic here, do you do acupuncture as like a routine, or have you dove into it?
I've never actually done acupuncture. I know of it, and I know people who have it done, but I've never done it myself.
Okay. Well, the reason why I bring that up is because a friend told me about this mat. It's called, the main brand is like Skoon, Skoon mats or something, and it has these tiny discs that look like cleats off of a golf shoe, and they're spikes, and they're sharp as all hell, literally. And you're supposed to lay on it, and your body releases, all these endorphins to help you stimulate different parts of your body. And it's basically acupuncture, at home, without anybody jamming needles in. And I'm using it on my feet right now. And honestly, again, it's probably just, my mind playing tricks on me. I feel energized. It's so weird. Whatever. You know what? It's probably another gimmick that I'm just really enjoying right now. Ask me in a month, I'll probably hate it. So whatever. So my man, Samir, honestly, dude, you got some cool stuff. I dig it. I appreciate you coming on here. Thanks for reaching out to me. And for the people out there, Samir and I, like I said, never met up. We never talked. He sent me an email. I looked at his stuff. I was inspired. Truly, the only way to get out there and to change your life is to ask. And if he never asked, he would never come on here. He would never inspire you. And maybe you dug with his stuff, and maybe you didn't. Regardless, he had some great things to share. Samir, my man, thank you so much. I hope a lot of people contact you, and good luck in your endeavors.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to Samir for coming on the Operation Self Reset podcast. I always find it intriguing and interesting to listen to people from different backgrounds, different mindsets, and it's truly inspiring to know that everybody's journey can help somebody else. And for you out there that doesn't feel you have a lot to share, truly you do. Your journey is as important as anybody else that comes on this podcast or anybody that wrote a book, and your journey needs to be shared. And so don't feel that just because you're living a mundane life that you don't have any experiences to tell people about. You do. It's all within your story. Every single day is a journey. So embrace it, look for it, and tell people about it, because what you can share to them could be the difference maker in their own life. So with that being said, I appreciate your support. We'll catch you next week, Wednesday, for another great interview and episode of Operation Self Reset.